Hey everyone, welcome to the Open World Warcraft, where we focus on 100% open world PvE content in World of Warcraft, things like leveling, world quest, and delves. My name is Setsuko, and in this video what I want to do is cover the Druid class talent tree and just kind of go through each of the abilities and point out which ones I think are really valuable versus which ones I think you can skip in open world content. And just kind of give you some advice there in case you're trying to put together your own build. Now, we are going to be primarily looking at the Guardian version of this tree, but we'll bounce back and forth just to check and see if there are any differences between the other specializations. And as we go through, I am going to be trying to give you some perspective on all the different specializations when it comes to each of the talent points. Before we get into this, I do want to cover a couple things. So I want to cover the different types of builds that you can kind of go into with Druid, because there's a lot of flexibility. Now, with Guardian Druid, you can kind of go for either a bear focused build where you stay in bear form. You could go for one where you're basically a Guardian Druid, but you do a lot of stuff in cat form, and you can kind of lean a little bit more heavily into the arcane moonfire type stuff as well. Generally, I tend to focus on the staying in bear form version of this build, because my thought process here is that if you want to go cat, you might as well go feral. If you want to focus on that arcane stuff, you might as well go balance. And so bear is bear, and that's generally what we're going to do here. With restoration, it's kind of the same thing. So you can lean into that like cat side of restoration, or you can lean into that more balanced side of restoration. Now in this case, there's not really like a great restoration, you know, like Guardian has bear is bear. Restoration doesn't really have like a we're going to do good damage going into restoration. Because of the way the stats line up with you wanting to prioritize certain stats over others for healing, those stats generally complement the balance side of things. So for restoration, I do tend to lean into playing it like a balanced druid that has a lot more healing going on to it. So just want to kind of preface that and let you know that, you know, that's generally what we're going to look at. Within all that, there's definitely multiple builds once you get into your spec trees, and then also once you get into your hero talent trees. But just know that generally for Guardian Druid, we're going to be focused on staying bear, and for Restoration Druid, we're going to be focused on leaning into the balanced side of the tree. So let's take a look at the starting talents that we're going to get for each of the different specializations. So for Guardian, we're going to get Frenzied Regeneration. This is our heal ability. Heals us for 20% of our health over 3 seconds. Really nice, really solid to be in. We need to use bear form in order to activate this, so it's not really as valuable for the other 3 specializations, but it's really great for Guardian. Then we have Thrash. So Thrash requires cat or bear form. This is going to thrash all nearby enemies, dealing damage and making them bleed. It can stack up to a certain amount of times as well. This is a really great pickup for Guardian and also for Feral Druid, not so much for balance and restoration. If we look at our Feral Druid, so we're going to be getting Rake. This is kind of our basic ability here that generates a combo point for us. It's going to leave a bleed on the target as well. Again, mainly just something we're going to want to pick up for our Feral Druid in terms of use here, because it does require a cat form. And then we have Rip. This is our first sort of combo finisher here. We're going to build combo points with Rake, and then we can spin them on Rip, which causes a bleed. Again, cat form is required here. So for Feral, we're going to focus on that and not so much for the other specializations. Balanced Druid gets Starfire. So this calls down a burst of energy, dealing arcane damage to the target, and it does damage to all other enemies within 10 yards. So this is a really solid pickup, obviously needed for balance, but good for restoration as well. And this leads us into Star Surge. So this will launch a surge of energies at the target, dealing damage. Again, we've got it on balance. It's going to be a good pickup for restoration as well. Restoration, our starters are Rejuvenation, which is totally fine. It's a heal over time that we can toss out on an instant cast. Generally speaking, we're going to want to pick this up on balance as well, but we're not going to want to pick it up on Guardian or Feral because it will shift us out of our cat and bear form when we use it. However, we can use these with our other 2 specializations pretty easily. And then we have Wild Growth. This will heal up to 5 injured allies within 30 yards of the target. Healing starts high and declines over time. So we've got this on Resto. We're pretty much going to skip this on the rest of the specializations. Okay, so let's get in here. We've talked about all 3 of the top talents here. Let's get into the next row. So right here, Feline Swiftness, this increases your movement speed by 15%. To me, this is a mandatory pickup on all specializations. So you're going to put a point into Rake and then put a point into Feline Swiftness just to get that on every single specialization. Increased movement speed is just really nice to have in open world content. Skipping Thrash, because we talked about it, we've got improved Bark Skin. So the duration of Bark Skin is increased by 4 seconds. Bark Skin is a defensive ability. This is really nice to have. I believe on Restoration and Balance, it will prevent interruption to your spell casting, which is nice. And then for Guardian and Feral, it's just going to give you some damage reduction. Depending on your build, you may want to pick this up. It also could be a skippable for you as well. Next, we have Remove Corruption. So this removes curse and poison effects on a target. No real reason to pick this one up here in open world content. Generally, you're not going to have a curse or poison on you that's so bad that you need to, spec a whole talent point into it for this. All right, we already covered Star Surge, and we're going to move on. We covered Rip. So Iron Fur, this requires Bear Form and increases your armor. Pretty much a mandatory pickup on Guardian Druid. There's a lot of good synergies with Iron Fur over on the specialization side of the tree. For the other classes, you can pretty much skip this one. Because you're not going to be going into bear form all that often. Balance, you're going to be in Moonkin. Restoration, you're going to be in your normal form. And Feral, you're going to be in cat form. Next, we have Verdant Heart here. So this has to do with our Frenzied Regeneration. So Frenzied Regeneration and Bark Skin increase all healing received by 20%. So Frenzied Regeneration, you are going to be healing yourself. It's going to increase that, plus anything else you have going on. And then for the other specializations, Bark Skin, increasing that healing could be nice as well. So just depending on your build and how heavily you want to invest in a Bark Skin and how heavily you're investing into your healing, this could be an okay pickup or it could be a skippable. We already talked about Wild Growth. We've got Sunfire here. So Sunfire is a beam of light that will deal damage to an enemy. This is pretty much a mandatory pickup for Balance and Restoration. It gives you another damage over time on top of your Moonfire. If you are playing Feral, this is a skip. If you're playing Bear, this is generally a skip as well. Next, we have Maim. This is a finisher that deals physical damage and stuns the target. This is, to me, a mandatory pickup on Feral Druid, and you can skip it on all other Druids. Then we have Killer Instinct. Physical damage and armor is increased by 3%. This is a mandatory pickup for both Feral and Guardian as well. You could also pick this up on Balance and Restoration if you had gone into this for some reason. But generally speaking, on those classes, you won't be picking up Rip, Thrash, or Iron Fur. So it's unlikely that you will have gone into this to pick that up. Next, we have Hibernate. This forces the enemy to sleep for up to 40 seconds. This only works on Beast and Dragonkin, so the use here is very limited. So in general, I would skip this. If you are in an area where there are lots of Beast and Dragonkin, this can be a nice little CC for you that can help you to pick out an enemy, put them to sleep while you take care of a different one. Next, we have Nurturing Instinct. So magical damage and healing is increased by 3%. Really good pickup across all specializations. For Restoration and Balance, that magical damage is going to help. That also does help a little bit on Guardian Druid with some of the stuff they can do. And then increased healing is just great for all 4 specializations because they all have ways to heal themselves. And then we have Improved Sunfire. So Sunfire, basically this turns Sunfire into an AoE. Again, if you've picked up Sunfire, to me this is basically a mandatory pickup for open world content, unless you are playing a build where you really just nuke down one target at a time, which is probably unlikely, but could be possible with Balance Druid. Unlikely with Restoration Druid. So in general, you're going to want to pick this up if you're playing Balance or Restoration and you've already gotten Sunfire. On to our next row, we have Skull Bash. Excuse me. We've got to spend a couple more points here, so we'll go ahead and put one in here, just to kind of get us down into the tree. And we'll put one there. So Skull Bash here, you are going to charge and bash the target's skull, interrupting spell casting. So this is basically our interrupt. It requires cat form, bear form, mandatory pickup for Guardian and Feral Druid. You can skip on balance and restoration because you're unlikely to go into this part of the tree anyway. But if you are over here, it can be okay. But in general, I would skip it for balance and restoration. Then we have Thick Hide, reduces all damage taken by 4%. If you're over here, I would just grab this, any specialization. If for some reason you're already over here in the tree, 4% damage reduction is good on all specializations. Now we do have an entry point here. If you notice, this is not chained to anything. So this is a way that we can kind of spread across the tree without having had to go all the way down it here. This gives us Mass Entanglement or Ursol's Vortex. So Mass Entanglement will root all targets within 12 yards for 10 seconds, and damage that you do can interrupt the effect. This is okay. This could be fine if you're on balance or restoration and you just have kind of a lot of targets and you're wanting to root some of them while you attack one specific one. Ursol's Vortex here. This will conjure a vortex of wind for 10 seconds that reduces the movement speed of enemies by 50%. And the first time that the enemy tries to leave the vortex, it'll pull that enemy back to its center as well. Mass Entanglement has a 30-second cooldown, and Ursol's Vortex has a 1-minute cooldown. Either one of these is an okay pickup, depending on how often you need this effect. If you need it a lot, I'd go for Mass Entanglement. If you need it every now and again, go for Ursol's Vortex, or you could also just skip it as well. Next, we have Natural Recovery. So healing you receive is increased by 4%. So again, really nice pickup across all specializations. Then we have Astral Influence. So this increases the range of all your spells by 5 yards. Pretty much a mandatory pickup for Balance and Restoration Druid here. Just going to increase all those spells. Also, this can be nice for Guardian Druid if you are doing things like Moonfire. Moving to the next row, we've got Primal Fury. While in cap form, when you critically strike with an attack that generates a combo point, you gain an additional combo point. Damage over time cannot trigger this, and Mangle critical strike damage is increased by 20%. This is a nice pickup for both Feral and Guardian Druid. So Feral is going to be doing that extra combo point generation, and Guardian's going to be using Mangle a lot. So increased critical strike damage on those is good. Pretty much a mandatory pickup for both. Skip on Guardian and Resto. Or sorry, skip on Balance and Resto. Next, we have a choice node here. We got Wild Charge and Tiger Dash. So Tiger Dash, 45-second cooldown. You shift into cap form and increase your movement speed by 200%, gradually reducing over 5 seconds. And Wild Charge lets you fly to a nearby ally's position. If we look at this, this is different based on the specialization that you are playing. So if you look at this Wild Charge, if you're not shape-shifted, so if you're playing as Resto here, then you will fly to an ally's position. Bear form, you're going to charge to an enemy, immobilizing them for 4 seconds. Cat form, you leap behind them and daze them. Moonkin, you leap forward 20 yards, and in aquatic form, it increases your swim speed by an additional 150% for 5 seconds. Generally, what I recommend is the pickup here is Wild Charge because it's versatile regardless of what form you're in. So it works for all specializations, and also that increased swim speed is pretty nice. But you could totally pick up Tiger Dash too, just for a quick burst of speed if you need it. Either one of these is fine. I usually go for Wild Charge, unless the ability doesn't make any sense. Like in this case, fly to a nearby ally's position. To me, that's not something that I'm going to be doing, so I would pick up Tiger Dash here. Next, we have Soothe. This is a dispel of enrage effects. In my opinion, not really worth picking up here. Then we have Cyclone. This tosses the enemy into the air, disorienting them, but making them invulnerable to damage for 6 seconds. So again, this just kind of neutralizes a target for 6 seconds. We are going to want to get down into Stampeding Roar, so we'll take something along this path here. In general, I would probably pick up something like Ursol's Vortex into Cyclone in order to be able to do that. Next, we have Renewal. This instantly heals you for 30% of your maximum health and is usable in all shapeshift forms. It's basically a healing potion. And because of that, I will normally try to get down in here and get the points to be able to get to this. So it might be something like, remove corruption into nurturing instinct, into natural recovery, into renewal. Over here, we have Starlight Conduit, Wrath, Surge, and Starfire. Damage is increased, and Star Surge cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. Mana cost reduced by 50%. Mandatory pickup for Restoration and Balance Druids. So if you're coming down here, you're going to get this one 100%. Next row, we have Matted Fur when you use Bark Skin or Survival Instincts, which is another defensive ability that we have on Guardian Druid. Yep. And we also have it on Feral Druid. Then you absorb damage. So a nice defensive here on top of a defensive we're already going to be using, but again, not necessarily a mandatory pickup. I would say on Guardian Druid, this is definitely a pass. On Feral Druid, if you do find yourself needing that defensive and you want to buff it up a little bit, then this could be a pickup for you as well. Guardian Druid, you have enough mitigation and things like that you shouldn't really be taking a ton of damage. So Survival Instincts on its own is probably good enough. Then we have Ursine Vigor. For 4 seconds after shifting into bear form, your health and armor are increased. This is really nice. It's just a nice little buff that you get there. For Feral... Nope. So this pickup for me is fine. You can skip it on Guardian Druid, or you could pick it up on Guardian Druid for the extra little bonus. I would skip it on all other specializations. Then we have Ursoc Spirit. Stamina in bear form is increased by 10%. That's a really nice pickup for your bear form there. So I would just go ahead and grab that in Guardian Druid, pass on the other specializations. Then we have Stampeding Roar, 2-minute cooldown. You shift into bear form and increase the movement speed of all friendly players by 60% for 8 seconds. It is a 2-minute cooldown, but it is a nice movement buff, and we do want to pick that up just to give ourselves some additional movement speed when we need it. Especially comes in handy indoors as well. We have an increase on the duration of Rejuvenation. If Rejuvenation has a place in your build and your rotation, I would pick this up. However, if it's something that you're not using because, for example, it shifts you out of your bear form or cat form or whatever, then this is an easy pass. Next, we have Rising Light, Falling Night. So increases your damage and healing by 3% during the day, increases your versatility by 2% during the night. Weird, but I mean, it's just passive damage and healing increase or versatility, which is tailored to the spec that you're playing in. So to me, this is like just an easy 1-point damage boost. Then we have Typhoon. This blasts targets in front of you, knocking them back and reducing their movement speed. This is one that if you find you are dealing with a lot of issues with too many enemies attacking you, in Balance or Restoration, you could pick this one up. I would not pick this one up for Feral or Guardian because you want the enemies to be close to you because you're melee. But that knockback also can be problematic because you might knock enemies into other enemies and then pull more enemies, and now all of a sudden you've got way too much stuff going on that you didn't want. So Typhoon is a, see how you're playing. If you feel like you need it, you can pick it up. Now we get into our capstones here. So over on this side, we kind of have our Feral Guardians capstone. So this makes it so that Shred, Brutal Slash, Swipe, Rake, Mangle, and Thrash damage is increased by 5%. We can put 2 points into that for 10% increase. Mandatory for Feral and Guardian both. Continuing on here, Survival Instincts and Bark Skin reduce damage taken by an additional 10%. This, again, same as matted fur. It just depends on whether you need all that extra from survival instincts and bark skin. Generally, Guardian, I don't think you need it, and Feral, you just have to kind of see how your build works. Over here, we do have a choice between incapacitating roar, so you can shift into bear form. And if we go over to Feral, yeah, it's still, we're going to shift into bear form. And then we're going to incapacitate all enemies within 10 yards for 3 seconds. Damage taken will cancel the effect. Or we have Mighty Bash. Mighty Bash is a 1-minute cooldown, 4-second stun. Generally speaking, my go-to for this is to grab Mighty Bash, so we get increased damage into a 4-second stun. That brings us to the capstone. When you fall below 40%, you cast Frenzied Regeneration up to once every 120 seconds. Okay, so that just means, hey, you know, if you fall below 40%, you can cast this. Again, Guardian Druid, don't really think you need it. Feral Druid, it's nice to have this. Look at your play style. If you're never dropping below 40%, then don't pick this up and put the points somewhere else where you can get some more utility. Looking on the right side of the tree, this is sort of our balance and resto side. So we start here with Moonfire and Sunfire damage is increased, and Rejuvenation and Wild Growth healing is increased. Mandatory pickup for Restoration and Balance because of the increase on the Moonfire and Sunfire damage. Also, good place to put points if you are playing Guardian Druid because they are casting Moonfire as well. So you can put points into there. Skippable on Feral Druid. Going down, casting Regrowth increases your movement speed and healing received for 8% for 6 seconds. There are ways for you to use Regrowth in your cat and bear form, as well as your Moonkin and regular form. So this is an okay pickup on all specializations if you have the points and you want to go for it. So that can be an okay pickup for you there. And then we have Innervate. So 3-minute cooldown, infuse a friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without spending mana. Hard pass for every single specialization. You should not be picking this up. You should just pick up Forest Walk instead. That leads us into the capstone, Nature's Vigil. 1.5-minute cooldown for 15 seconds. All single target damage also heals a nearby friendly target for 20% of the damage done. Again, take it or leave it on this one. If you feel like it'd be nice to have that extra sort of sustainability, pick it up. Otherwise, I would just leave it and put those points into a different part of the tree. And then the middle here, we kind of have our hybrid capstone. So we start out with Lykara's Teachings. So you gain 3% of a stat in each form. So no form, you gain haste. So you're going to gain haste and restoration. So you're going to cast your spells faster. Cat form, you're going to get critical strike, which you want critical strikes to build combo points and things like that. Bear form, you're going to want that versatility, and then Moonkin form, you want mastery. So this is just nice 6% flat stats across all of your specializations. In my opinion, a mandatory pickup for every single specialization. Then we have Improved Stampeding Roar, which reduces the cooldown by 60 seconds, taking it down to a 1-minute cooldown, which is really nice in my opinion. I like picking this up. You have to get Stampeding Roar to even get here, so cut that cooldown in half and you can use it more often. And then over here we have Fluid Form, so Shred and Rake can be used in any form and shift you into cat form. Mangle can be used in any form and shift you into bear form. And then Wrath and Starfire shift you into Moonkin form if it's known. Again, this is if you want to go back and forth between a bunch of different forms. For example, if you were doing the Guardian Druid where you did like bear and you switch back and forth into cat form, maybe this is something to pick up. In general, I like to stay in the form that I'm in for all 4 specializations. So this is kind of a skip for me, but if you like more of that fluid swap back and forth, you could pick this up. And then finally, the capstone, Heart of the Wild here. This will make it so that abilities not associated with your current specialization are substantially empowered for 45 seconds. So again, what this does is it makes it so it's easier for you to kind of flip back and forth between different roles, which I think is really cool. But generally speaking, you're going to stay in the one form that you're using while you're leveling up. And so I would skip Heart of the Wild here as well. So really what this would kind of look like if we were sticking with, you know, sort of the Guardian Feral Druid here is you would put the 3 points in here, and then you would basically use the rest of your points to fill out your capstone for your side of the tree. And then you've got another point that you could throw in somewhere. So, you know, maybe for bear, I would put like a point into Moonfire damage or something like that. So all of these capstones here are pretty much skippable depending on what you want to do. Honestly, for bear, I would probably take that point out and just put that point there. This, again, is not supposed to be the Guardian build that I use or anything like that. We're just going through, clicking on stuff to show you the talents here. But that's my opinion on the Druid class talent tree, what I think is really good, what I think you can skip, pass on, etc., and why. Hopefully this was useful for you. If you like it, then hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and support us, and share this video with a friend who might be playing Druid during the War Within. I appreciate you taking time to watch one of my videos here, and I'll see you on the next one.